Hi. This version is going to be for teachers, so you guys can see what I had in mind on this lesson. I just want to run through it real quick to give you an idea, and then you can put your own spin on it and, do what you think you need to do for your kids. I always have my do now up on the screen for when kids come in so they know what items they need for the day and then what they need to get started on. This is a question for them to consider. It's an open-ended question. The idea is just to get them settled into class and started thinking about our topic for the day. So, what factors inspire an individual to leave behind what's familiar and comfortable in order to experience what is new or difficult? So the idea is for students to think about maybe their own situations when they've left a situation where they're comfortable and started something new. It could be moving to a new house, a new city, state, a new school, um, maybe changing friend groups, trying something new, different. So, what did they have to do in order to take that step and try something different? So, hopefully, they're going to give you some thoughtful answers. I make my kids write at least two complete sentences, and that's the minimum. You always have some kids who just want to write one or two sentences or one or two words. Anyway, okay, so there we go over our norms. I might add like phone should be put away on here. Then we go through our teaks for the day. This one is focusing on figurative language because our ECR is going to be about the symbolism that is used in this poem. So they're going to be able to use inferences about the author's purpose. So why this image? Why this detail? Why are they describing it in this way? Looking at those poetic features of sonnets. I'm going to talk the next couple of slides a little bit about sonnets. But because this is a sonnet that has been translated from German, some of the meter and rhymes do not work. So I'm not going to hit too heavy on sonnets on this one, but we will touch on the conventions of sonnets. And then we're going to look at how these stanzas are organized and how that affects the meaning of the poem. And then they will have, I'm going to have to change that from 3 questions. It's 4 questions now. Okay, so we have our sonnet. So what is a sonnet? This will just give them a background information. They should be able to follow along on their guided notes with this. So sonnets are traditionally 14-line poems. They're in iambic pentameter. They have rhyme schemes. They should have a pretty clear rhyme scheme. But again, because this poem has been translated from German, iambic pentameter and rhyme scheme don't really apply in the English version. But just to show them what iambic pentameter is, I have this one. So you have the unstressed and then the stressed syllable. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now, we don't say it like that, but when we are kind of breaking down a poem, we can do it like that. So if you're trying to figure out if it's iambic pentameter, that's how you do it. There's a beat, there's a meter to it. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Here is the rest of that sonnet. This is to show them what a traditional sonnet will look like. You have your 14 lines, you have your rhyme scheme. It's also important to think about how a sonnet or the poet is using the sonnet. There's a turn, so a place where something changes. We've been talking about a shift in poetry. So this is a kind of shift. In line 9 in this poem, you can see Shakespeare uses that word but, and to kind of take a new perspective on the beauty of his beloved. And then you have 3 quatrains, so 3 groups of 4 lines, and then a couplet down here at the end. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this and gives life to thee. So we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this sonnet. This is just to kind of expose them. This is also in their guided notes, so they should be following along as you go over what a sonnet is. All right, this slide is going to be background about the myth of Orpheus. This is a cool video that should be pretty interesting to them. While they're watching, prompt them before you start the video to think about what are some symbols that they see in the story. They might see things like music, death, They might notice that there's a snake in there, the idea of hell, the underworld, love. There's all kinds of symbols that your students might see. Then have them think about, why would a poet write a sonnet to Orpheus? What is special about Orpheus? And then that will lead into the last question, which is kind of our distant learning question, or a distant reading question. What can we still learn from the story of Orpheus? The story of Orpheus that is older than recorded history. Orpheus was old when the Greeks started writing about it. So this is an old myth. Why are we still talking about it? So this might get this kid start to think about some of the themes that we're going to see in this sonnet. Okay. This is a thinking routine that I'm going to try with our kids to get them thinking about how to start moving towards abstract thought, because we know that our students struggle with this. Now, the district kind of goes from this top apple down to the bottom, and we know that our kids struggle with this. So as we take bites out of the apple, they should be getting closer and closer to this abstract meaning. What is there at the core? What's the seed of this idea? If you want to, bring some apples into class. And as we're asking questions, take a bite. This can help for those students who need a little bit more interaction in the story. They might need a snack, and it might help them emphasize. So like every time we take one of these steps, take a bite out of that apple, we're going to get closer and closer to the core, to the center of what this is about. So you're going to read the poem together. I feel like this is important. Don't just say, all right, y'all read this, because who knows what they're going to do. You read it with them. They need to hear the music of the poem. Even though this is a translation, and even though we know that the meter doesn't really fit here, it's still a gorgeous poem. You can read it with them. If you have a class that has higher engagement, have them take turns reading. Here's Chupa. Hey. Have them take turns reading. It makes a huge difference when they hear the words, when they hear how this poem flows. So you're going to stop after each stanza and do some thinking. So you can read it through once, just so that they can listen to it if you want, if you have time, or you can just do the stanza by stanza breakdown. And as you guys read, there's questions in their guided notes that they're going to answer. All right. Okay, so stanza 1. Read this together. You read it out loud or have one of your students do it. And then you can either have them do a turn and talk. You can have them just write the answers to themselves and then do a, I forget what it's called, but have one student share out their answer. So like as they're writing it down, you go and see who's writing something good, something interesting, and say, when the timer goes off, will you share what you wrote? That gives them time to mentally prepare. You're not just saying, hey, you, what did you write? So give them time to prepare what they're going to say. They know it's coming up, and then you have sharing, and you can say, great job. You said something really interesting, and other kids are listening. So we have our first 2 levels. So first is this outer apple. So what's just there? What do we see? What's the imagery that we see? What's the feeling that we get? And then what questions do we have? Now, kids are always tempted to say, I don't have any questions. I understand it. But push them to think about questions that they might not have even considered. So who's the artist? Why would they love a body turning away? Why is the body turning away? If you have more advanced students, who is the poet talking to? Why are they commanding us? Are they commanding the artist? Are they commanding us as the reader? What is going on here? So students tend to take the reading as it is, and they don't know that they can question it. So showing them, if they need it, showing them some questions to ask might get those wheels turning. All right, stanza 2. Again, read it together. We're going to start with some questions again. So, obvious questions to us might be, what are they talking about? What locks itself in sameness? What are they talking about? Are they talking about us? Is this Orpheus? Is this the poet himself? What turns hard becomes rigid and is easily shattered. So can they connect this to something that they know? It could be something physical, like I dropped a glass and it shattered. It was hard and rigid. You could connect it to something a little bit more abstract if they can think that way. I thought I was strong, but I broke down under pressure. I was trying to be tough and it didn't work. And then what's the poet really talking about? When he's saying turning hard and becoming rigid, we have kind of an idea of a statue. But is that what they're talking about? Or are they talking about something else? Are they talking about our heart? Like when we become rigid in who we are and we don't want to change. That's what the poet's kind of getting at and what we were hoping to lead them to say, the students. Anyway. All right, stanza 3. So find the simile. This should be easy. A lot of students can find similes because they're using like or as. Pour yourself like a fountain. So who might be the poet talking to? Who is he telling? There's a lot of commands in this poem. Who is he telling to pour themselves like a fountain? Is it us? Is he talking to Orpheus? Is he talking to himself? What's another way that this information could be stated? So here I'm talking about those second 2 lines. Flow into the knowledge that what you're seeking finishes often at the start and with the ending begins. This is a real twisty way to say the meaning. So they could say something like, when we untwist it, we know that everything ends and we can't start something new until the last thing ends. So the idea might be a little bit more straightforward than the way the poet has said it. So now challenge them to think, why did the poet choose to say it this way? Why put it in this twisty kind of a way? We might get some interesting answers for them from that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. All right, stanza 4. Every happiness is the child of a separation. It did not think it could survive. And Daphne, becoming Laurel, dares you to become the wind. This one is a little bit more challenging because the poet is introducing a new mythical figure of Daphne who is not covered in that first video. I think all the kids really need to know is that Daphne was a nymph who turned into a laurel tree rather than be pursued by the god Apollo, who she did not love. Now, if the kids are asking for more information, we can say, Apollo was struck by a golden arrow of Cupid and Daphne was struck by an arrow of lead. Cupid did this to punish Apollo. But instead, Daphne seems to be the one who got the short end of the stick. Once she turned into that laurel, Apollo used the laurel branches as signs of victory. So that's why you might see Julius Caesar wearing the laurel branches, or in the Olympics, they used to get laurel crowns. This might be a symbol that students are familiar with. So again, have them find the personification. Here, happiness is a child. How does that change our perception of happiness when we think of happiness as a child? You can even encourage them to take a step further. A child of separation. This might be something that our kids are familiar with. Some of our kids are children of separation themselves. Their parents are separated or divorced, or maybe someone is no longer with the family for some reason. There's a wide variety of situations that would cause children to be in a situation where their families are separated. So this is a good connection for kids to make. And a lot of us, when we go through these kinds of separations, we don't think we can make it, but we do. How does this connect to happiness? Next question, and now we're getting to kind of that root, that seed of the poem, is why now? Why does the poet bring up Daphne? What's special about Daphne, and what does she have to do with the rest of this poem? And then our final question will get us to the theme. What is the message that the poet wants us to understand? So the students should be looking back at all of these bites that they've taken out of the apple to figure out, what does this all mean? Now, hopefully they're going to see this pattern of change, this pattern of not staying the same, this pattern of transformation. So throughout the poem, we've seen these different symbols. So it starts off with the flame, the curve of the body, the fountain, the color gray, the laurel, the wind. They will be in groups. Everybody will have one symbol to dissect, to analyze. Give them 20 minutes because it takes them a little bit of time to get these things going. And then they'll go through all those whole steps, all of those bites out of the apple with that one symbol. So one student will do the flame, one will do the statue, you know. Um, After that 20 minutes, they only have 15 minutes to share. So you got to keep them on task. By the end, they should have all of those symbols filled out for all of the apple bites. It is a lot, I know. This lesson might take more than a whole class period, but we'll work with it. I think this is important for them to get through this thought process. Let me get through these timers. Okay, so again, I changed the DOL from 3 to 4 questions. They were taken from the unit or the content test from HMH. That'll be on the packet and the answers will be in the teacher copy, so no worries about that. This statue is interesting because this is the moment where Daphne is turning into that laurel tree, and you can see kind of the desperation on her face and Apollo's mild surprise. He doesn't look completely shocked, but he does look a little confused or nonplussed. But you can see, if you enlarge it, you can see her fingers turning into the branches and leaves and her toes turning into roots. So this is a marble statue. So remember when the poem was saying about being tough and rigid, but it's showing that moment of change. So if you have kids who are interested in this poem and they want to think about it a little bit more deeply, they can think about it in the context of this statue. What does it mean that we have a moment of change captured in a static form like marble? Okay, so this is the end of the first lesson. Next, if they haven't finished the DOL from the first day, they can finish it the second day. I imagine most kids would have not finished that, so give them like 5 or 7 minutes to do that. This will also give them a refresher on the poem so that they don't need a lot of time getting caught back up once we get into the class. So again, we have our norms. This lesson is about writing an ECR. They should have it done in one class period. I know the complaint about it, but that's how it is on the test. They don't have 2-3 days to write, 3 paragraphs on the STAR test. So again, I always think it's important to refresh the rubric for them, let them know that this development of ideas portion is the most important because we've got those three points there. They have to have a thesis. They have to have an introduction and conclusion. They have to have 2 pieces of text evidence, and they have to explain that evidence. Now, I've been telling the kids that they need to have paragraphs, like 3 paragraphs. I've been seeing on some of the teacher resources that when their ECRs are being graded, they aren't looking at paragraphs, but they are looking for distinct introductions and conclusions. So it could technically be a 1-paragraph ECR and still get a 4. I don't want to tell the kids that because I think it's going to give them an excuse or make them feel like they don't have to really write an introduction and conclusion. If they're making them paragraphs, they're making them intentional. And so I really think that we need to tell them to do paragraphs to make sure that they do it. And that way they also have visual evidence that they've got introductions and conclusions. 2 pieces of evidence, they need to be direct quotes. Again, that's not a requirement from the rubric, but it again shows the student that the students are being intentional about quotes and that they're not just summarizing, because I see too many people wanting to summarize. And then explain their evidence. Now, a lot of kids do just really basic explanations. That's better than nothing. If that's all they can do, that's fine. What you don't want them to do is circular reasoning. So if you find that, tell them to tell us something new. Tell us something that they haven't already told us. We don't want to repeat ourselves. And then we have our conventions down at the bottom. Most of our kids that I've seen are like at a 1. A few kids are at a 2. If you've already got someone who has the top part down pat, then you can start focusing on conventions. But for most kids, I think we need to focus on that top part. All right, breaking down the rubric. Now, in the past, I would do this with the kids. On this one, because we were so close to the STAR test, and because even on that mock STAR test, we saw that people didn't understand that this was an ECR, I want them to annotate it themselves. Give them 5 to 7 minutes to annotate this themselves. So the most important thing that you need to see that they know is what are they going to write about. They need to circle it, underline it, write notes off to the side, something so that you know that they know what they're writing about. So when you're circling, when you're doing your monitoring and you're looking, you've got to see that evidence of their thinking. So something like this is what I would be looking for. If they just have it on the topic, that at least shows that they know what they're going to write about. Everything is better, but something is better than nothing. All right, so then again, I'm not going to guide them through brainstorming, which we've done in the past. This will be on their own, but I have put up some questions for them to help them guide their thinking. These are pretty general, and these are not specific to this prompt. So what evidence from the text do you need to answer the question? How much evidence do you need? What organizational structure will you use? So that's got to help them think about how many paragraphs, if they're doing 2 paragraphs with one example, or 2 examples and 2 body paragraphs. Hopefully it gets them thinking about how they're going to write this thing. And then what's the main idea of their essay? They'll have 15 minutes to brainstorm, and they should have their thesis statement. Now, kids, from what I have seen, are generally getting better at thesis statements, but they might still need help. So during these 15 minutes, that's time for you to circulate, guide the students, make sure that they're on task, because we don't have extra time for this if someone's lollygagging. So do that aggressive monitoring. Make sure that they're doing what they need to do. Then they have 30 minutes to do their draft. Now, one thing I was surprised about is the last time we did that ECR on A Sound of Thunder, I gave the kids the option to use this. I thought most of them were not, but a solid half of my kids utilized this outline. And I was so proud of them because it definitely organizes the thinking. And then if they aren't able to finish their final draft, I have this to look at to see where they were going. So give them 30 minutes to do this. Remember, it takes them a little bit longer to think these things out. It takes them a little bit longer to write them out. It takes them a little bit longer to plan what they're going to do. So give them that time. Then they will have the remainder of class to do the final draft. Now, if they've done everything to this point, they should not need more than this time to write the final draft. All the work has already been done. This is just making the pretty copy. So I've just repasted the rubric from the prompt. I'm telling my kids they have to have 3 paragraphs minimum and 9 sentences minimum, because they'll just write 1 sentence and tell me that that's their paragraph. So this works out to 3 sentences per paragraph, and that's what's on their outline. So they should be able to do this. All right, so that's the end of what I've got for the slides so far. I'm going to make some minor tweaks to them, and hopefully you guys will have time to review this. If you have any questions, just email me or text me or whatever. I'll be around this weekend. And hopefully this will be a really good lesson. We'll get some good ECRs out of this. Oh, I forgot to tell you, since we don't have laptops, they're going to have to write them out. And I think this will also help cut down on some of the AI stuff that we've been seeing. So make sure that they're using their own words. And when we grade by the rubric, because these AI essays almost never follow the rubric. So anyway, like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you on Monday. Bye.